My name is Jessica Martinez, and I'm a 28-year-old ICU nurse at Mercy General Hospital. I'm telling you this story because I need you to understand that I'm not someone who scares easily. I've held the hands of dying patients. I've performed CPR on a teenager who'd been in a car accident. I've seen things that would give most people nightmares. But what happened to me on November 17th, 2024 was different. It was a Friday night, and my shift had run over by almost 2 hours. We'd had a multi-vehicle pileup come in around 9 p.m., and the ER had been chaos. By the time I'd finished my charting and handed off to the night shift, it was 11:43 p.m. I walked through the empty hospital corridors toward the staff parking garage, my feet aching in my sneakers. I'd been wearing the same pair of scrubs for 13 hours, and I could smell the mixture of antiseptic and sweat on my clothes. All I wanted was to get home, take a hot shower, and collapse into bed. But when I got to my parking spot on level B2, I remembered. My car was still in the shop. The check engine light had come on Monday, and the mechanic said it needed a new catalytic converter. They'd promised it would be ready by Friday, but when I'd called during my lunch break, they'd told me they were waiting on a part. Maybe Tuesday, they'd said. So there I stood in the fluorescent-lit parking garage, the hum of the ventilation system the only sound, pulling out my phone to request a ride. I opened the Ride Now app. I'd been using it for 3 years, ever since I moved to the city for this job. Usually pretty reliable, though the prices had gone up lately. Tonight was no exception. $34.50 for what should normally be an $18 trip. Surge pricing. I grimaced but pressed confirm. The app showed a car would arrive in 6 minutes. Driver, Marcus Webb. Vehicle, 2019 silver Toyota Camry. License plate, 8THP452. Rating, 4.97 stars, with 3,847 trips. I studied his profile photo while I waited. African-American man, maybe mid-40s, with a friendly smile and close-cropped hair going gray at the temples. He was wearing a blue polo shirt in the picture. The comments on his profile were typical. Very friendly. Clean car. Great conversation. One person had written, "Marcus knows all the best shortcuts. Got me to the airport 10 minutes early." That last comment made me smile. I appreciated efficient drivers. I walked toward the garage exit to street level, my footsteps echoing in the concrete space. As I passed the security camera near the stairwell, I noticed it was hanging at an odd angle, its usual blinking red light dark. I made a mental note to mention it to security, though I'd probably forget by Monday. The November air hit me as I emerged onto the street, cold and damp, with that smell of distant rain. A light fog was rolling in from the bay, the kind that made the streetlights look like they were glowing through gauze. My phone buzzed. Marcus has arrived. A silver Toyota Camry was idling at the curb, right where the app said it would be. The license plate matched, 8THP452. Through the windshield, I could see the driver, a black man wearing glasses and what looked like a dark jacket. I approached the car and opened the back passenger door. The interior light came on, and I saw him turn to look at me over his shoulder. "Jessica?" he asked. "That's me," I said, sliding into the back seat. The car was exceptionally clean, like immaculately clean. The seats looked freshly vacuumed, there wasn't a speck of dust on the dashboard, and the floor mats appeared brand new. A pine-scented air freshener hung from the rearview mirror, but underneath it I detected something else. A sharp chemical smell, like industrial cleaner. "How's your night going?" he asked as he pulled away from the curb. His voice was pleasant, with a slight southern accent I couldn't quite place. Georgia, maybe? Alabama? Long, I said, settling back into the seat. I sent a quick text to my roommate, Amber. In the ride, should be home in 20. Hospital work, he asked, glancing at my scrubs in the mirror. Yeah, ICU nurse. We had a crazy evening. Multiple trauma victims from a pile-up on the interstate. That sounds intense, he said. I really respect what you folks do. My sister's a nurse too, actually. Works in Atlanta. Oh yeah? What kind of nursing? Pediatrics, he said. She loves it. Says kids are more resilient than adults, bounce back faster. The conversation felt natural, easy. I relaxed a little, looking at my phone to check the route. We should be taking Madison Street to Highway 101 south, then exiting at Brookfield Avenue. Total time, 18 minutes. He turned onto Madison as expected, heading toward the freeway on-ramp. Traffic was light, just a few cars scattered here and there, some taxis, a couple of late-night buses. Normal for this time on a Friday. You always worked the late shift? He asked. Couple times a week, I said. I actually prefer it. Quieter, usually. Well, except for tonight. I bet. I usually drive nights myself. Better fares, less traffic. Though you get some interesting passengers at this hour, he chuckled. Had a guy last week, completely drunk, insisted we stop at 3 different fast food places. Took 45 minutes for what should have been a 15-minute trip. I smiled. Did he tip well, at least? $5 on a $30 fare, Marcus said, shaking his head. But hey, it's all part of the job. We merged onto Highway 101, and I watched the city lights blur past my window. The downtown skyline was still lit up, office buildings with their after-hours cleaning crews making geometric patterns of illuminated windows against the dark. A plane descended in the distance, heading for the airport north of the city. Everything felt normal, routine. Then Marcus changed lanes, moving from the middle lane toward the right. I assumed he was just positioning for our exit, which was coming up in about 3 miles. But instead of staying in the right lane, he took an exit I didn't recognize. Harwood Boulevard. I leaned forward slightly. I think you might have taken the wrong exit. Nah, there's construction up ahead on your route, he said casually. It's been there for 2 weeks now. Adds like 15 minutes to the trip. This way is much faster. I take it all the time. I looked at my phone. The app still showed him on Highway 101, the GPS icon sliding along the blue route line. But that wasn't uncommon. GPS lagged sometimes, especially in areas with poor signal. You sure? I asked. The app didn't mention any construction. Yeah, the apps are always behind on this stuff. Trust me, I do this route 5-6 times a night. I'll have you home quicker this way. Something in my stomach tightened. Not quite alarm, just a small sense of unease. But his explanation seemed reasonable. Rideshare drivers did know shortcuts that apps didn't account for, and he seemed so confident, so matter-of-fact about it. Still, I kept watching my phone as we drove down Harwood Boulevard. The street was darker than the freeway. Fewer lights, more industrial buildings, warehouses with loading docks, a closed auto repair shop, a storage facility with chain-link fencing. Should be back on the main route in just a minute, Marcus said. But a minute passed, then 2, then 5. The buildings were getting more sparse now, with empty lots between them. The streetlights were farther apart, creating pools of darkness between each illuminated section. I hadn't seen another car in at least 3 minutes. I checked my phone again. We were definitely off route now, and the app showed it. The blue line and our actual location had diverged significantly. The arrival time had changed from 12:04 a.m. to, recalculating, Marcus? I said, trying to keep my tone polite. I don't think this is the right way. The app is showing we're going in the wrong direction. Oh, the GPS is just confused. Happens all the time when you go off the main roads. We'll pop back onto Brookfield in just a couple minutes. There's a connector road up here. But something in his voice had changed. It was still friendly, still casual, but there was a firmness to it now, like he wasn't really open to discussion. I looked out the window more carefully now, trying to see if anything looked familiar. It didn't. To our right was a long chain-link fence with barbed wire on top, protecting what looked like an abandoned industrial complex. To our left, empty lots overgrown with dead grass and weeds, spotted with trash and rusted machinery. This wasn't a shortcut. This wasn't anywhere near my neighborhood. I really think we should turn around, I said, and I could hear my own voice getting tighter. This doesn't feel right. We can't turn around here, Marcus said, and his voice was still calm, still reasonable. There's nowhere to do it safely. These roads are too narrow. But don't worry, like I said, we're almost to the connector. I glanced at the driver's ID card displayed on the dashboard, required by the rideshare company. The photo showed Marcus Webb, 46 years old, with the same friendly smile from his profile picture. But now that I was really looking at it, something seemed off. The man in the photo had fuller cheeks, a slightly rounder face. The man driving had sharper features, more angular, and the ears were different. The Marcus in the photo had ears that stuck out slightly, while this driver's were flatter against his head. My heart started beating faster. I looked at my phone. No signal. How did I have no signal? I'd had full bars on the freeway. I need you to pull over right now, I said, not bothering to sound polite anymore. Right now, I want to get out. We can't stop here, Marcus said, and for the first time, his tone had shifted. Still calm, but with an edge to it. Something cold underneath the friendliness. Like I said, it's not safe. I tried the door handle. It didn't move. Child safety locks. The wave of panic that hit me was immediate and overwhelming. I yanked the handle again, harder. Nothing. I pressed the window button. The window didn't move. The controls are locked, the driver said, his voice now completely devoid of warmth. For safety reasons. Let me out of this car, I said, and I was proud that my voice came out strong despite the terror clawing at my chest. Let me out right now or I'm calling the police. You can try, he said, but as you've noticed, there's no signal out here. Tower's about 6 miles west. We're in what you might call a dead zone. That's actually why I like this area. Very private. He took a left turn onto an even smaller road, barely more than a dirt path with gravel. Tree branches scraped against the car's sides. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating nothing but trees and undergrowth. Who are you? I asked. My hand was shaking as I tried my phone again. No signal. I tried to dial 911 anyway. Call failed. Well, that's a complicated question, he said, philosophically speaking. You're not Marcus Webb. Very perceptive. No, I'm not Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb is a 46-year-old accountant from Sacramento who drives for RideNow on weekends to supplement his income. He's probably home right now, watching TV with his wife. He has no idea that someone cloned his driver profile 3 weeks ago. What do you want? I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. What do I want? He seemed to consider this as he drove deeper into the woods. I want a lot of things, Jessica. But right now, specifically, I want you to understand something. I want you to understand how perfectly the system is designed for someone like me." He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, and I could see his eyes clearly now. They were light blue, almost gray, and completely devoid of emotion, like looking at a shark. "Do you know how many people use rideshare apps every day in this city? Thousands, tens of thousands. And do you know how the verification system works? It's a joke. You take a selfie, you upload some documents, and boom, you're approved. They run a background check, sure, but that only catches people who've already been caught. What about people like me? People who've never been caught. People who are very, very careful." The trees opened into a clearing, and I felt my stomach drop. In the headlights, I could see a small concrete building, maybe an old pump house or utility shed. It looked abandoned, with rust stains running down from the roof and weeds growing up around the foundation. But the metal door looked new, with a shiny padlock hanging from the handle. He pulled the car to a stop about 15 feet from the building and put it in park, but he left the engine running and he didn't turn off the headlights. Then he turned around in his seat to look at me directly for the first time. Up close, I could see I'd been right. This wasn't Marcus Webb. This man was younger, maybe late 30s, with pale skin and those unsettling gray-blue eyes. He had a thin scar running along his jawline that hadn't been visible in the dim light before. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice eerily calm. "I'm going to open your door. You're going to step out. If you try to run, you won't get far, and you'll only make things harder on yourself. If you fight, same thing. Your best chance, your only chance, is to stay calm and do exactly what I say. Do you understand?" Every muscle in my body was screaming to do something, but what? I was trapped in a locked car with a stranger in the middle of nowhere with no cell signal. Even if I somehow got past him, where would I run? We were miles from anything. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, stalling for time, trying to think of any possible way out. He tilted his head, studying me like I was an interesting specimen. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice eerily calm. "I'm going to open your door. You're going to step out. If you try to run, you won't get far, and you'll only make things harder on yourself. If you fight, same thing. Your best chance, your only chance, is to stay calm and do exactly what I say. Do you understand?" He tilted his head, studying me like I was an interesting specimen. "You want the honest answer? Because I can. Because the society we've built, with all its technology, all its supposed safety measures, has created the perfect hunting ground. Everyone trusts the app. Everyone thinks it's verified, it's tracked, it's safe. But it's not. It's just the illusion of safety, and I exploit that illusion." He reached into the center console between the front seats and pulled out a syringe filled with clear liquid. My breath caught in my throat. "This is ketamine," he said, holding it up so I could see it clearly. "Veterinary grade. It won't kill you, that would defeat the purpose. It'll just make you compliant, calm, manageable. You'll still be conscious, still able to walk and follow instructions, but you won't be able to fight effectively. Think of it as a mercy." "Please," I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. "Please, I have a family. My parents, my little brother." "Everyone has a family," he interrupted, sounding almost bored. "That's not unique. That's not going to change anything." He turned back around and opened his door. The dome light came on, casting harsh shadows across the interior of the car. I watched in horror as he stepped out onto the gravel, taking the syringe with him. Through the window, I could see him walking around the front of the car in the headlight beams, moving with an unhurried, confident stride, like someone who'd done this before, many times before. My mind was racing. Think, Jessica, think. You're a nurse. You know human anatomy. You know vulnerabilities. You know how to handle violent patients. Wait. Violent patients? We had training for that. Yearly de-escalation courses, physical restraint techniques, where to position yourself, how to protect yourself. And I knew something else. Ketamine takes time to work when injected intramuscularly. Even IV, there's a window. If I could delay him injecting me, if I could create an opportunity. He reached my door. I heard the locks disengage with a soft click that sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet night. The door handle moved. This was it. This was my only chance. As the door swung open and he leaned in, reaching for me with the hand that held the syringe, I made my move. I'd been holding the shoulder strap of my seatbelt since he'd gotten out of the car, pulling out as much length as I could while keeping the buckle engaged. The moment he was close enough, I released the buckle and swung the belt outward with all my strength. The metal buckle caught him right in the face, not where I'd aimed for his eyes, but close enough. He stumbled backward with a shout of pain and surprise, dropping the syringe onto the gravel. I didn't think, I just moved. I launched myself out of the car, my feet hitting the ground, and I ran. Not toward the dirt road we'd come from, that was too obvious, too expected, but toward the tree line to the left, into the darkest part of the woods. Behind me, I heard him cursing, not shouting, but cursing in a low, angry voice that was somehow more frightening than if he'd screamed. Then I heard his footsteps crunching on the gravel, following. The woods were dense and dark, with only faint moonlight filtering through the canopy. Branches whipped at my face and caught at my scrubs. I could barely see where I was going, just kept pushing forward, away from the clearing, away from him. I could hear him behind me, not far enough behind. He was faster than me, and he knew these woods. I could tell by how confidently he was moving despite the darkness. My foot caught on something, a root or a fallen branch, and I went down hard, the impact knocking the wind out of me. Dead leaves and dirt filled my mouth. I scrambled to get up, but he was on me, his weight pressing me down into the forest floor. "You stupid bitch," he hissed in my ear, and his voice had lost all pretense of control now. It was pure rage. "You just made this so much worse for yourself. I was going to be quick. Now it's going to take hours." He had one hand tangled in my hair, yanking my head back. With his other hand, I could feel him reaching for something. Another syringe, maybe, or a weapon. My right hand was pinned under me, but my left was free. I clawed desperately at the ground, my fingers closing around a rock. It wasn't big, maybe the size of a tennis ball, but it was heavy and solid. I swung it backward over my shoulder, not sure where it would hit, just hoping for anything. It connected with something soft. His nose, maybe, or his mouth. He made a choking, gurgling sound, and his grip on my hair loosened just enough. I twisted my body violently, throwing him off balance, and swung the rock again. This time I could see where I was aiming, his temple. The rock connected with a sickening thud, and he rolled off me onto his side, dazed. I didn't wait to see if he'd get up. I scrambled to my feet and ran again, the rock still clutched in my fist, deeper into the woods. But I was disoriented now. Which direction was I going? Where was the clearing? Where was anything? Then I heard it, the sound of running water somewhere ahead. A stream or creek. I crashed through the undergrowth toward the sound, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. The ground sloped suddenly downward, and I half ran, half slid down a muddy embankment, grabbing at tree roots and branches to slow my descent. At the bottom was a creek, maybe 12 feet across, the water dark and moving fast over rocks. Behind me, I could hear him coming again, slower now, breathing hard, but still coming. He was saying something. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was conversational again, like he was explaining something to a child. That scared me more than the anger had. I splashed into the creek. The water was shockingly cold, instantly soaking through my sneakers and scrubs, coming up past my knees. The current was stronger than it looked, and the rocks underneath were slippery with algae. I nearly fell twice as I waded across, but I kept my balance and climbed up the opposite bank. At the top of the embankment, I found myself on what looked like an old logging road or fire access trail, two faint parallel ruts with grass and weeds growing between them. And to my right, maybe a mile away, I could see a faint orange glow against the low clouds. Light pollution. Civilization. I ran toward it, my wet clothes clinging to me, my body shaking from cold and adrenaline and shock. My lungs burned. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but I kept running. The sound of pursuit had faded. Either he'd lost me at the creek, or he'd given up, knowing I was getting close to help. But I didn't slow down to find out. I just kept running toward that orange glow. The logging road joined a paved two-lane highway after what felt like forever, but was probably only 10 minutes. And there, like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, was a 24-hour gas station, its fluorescent lights blazing against the darkness. I stumbled into the parking lot just as an elderly man in a Seahawks jacket was coming out with a fountain drink and a hot dog. He took one look at me, covered in mud and scratches and blood, soaking wet, shaking uncontrollably, and his eyes went wide. "Jesus Christ," he said, setting down his food and pulling out his phone. "What happened to you? Don't move, I'm calling 911. The words tumbled out of me in a rush. The fake driver profile, the kidnapping, the building in the woods, everything. Within 7 minutes, there were 3 patrol cars in the parking lot and an ambulance on the way. I gave the police everything I could remember. The name Marcus Webb on the profile, the license plate 8THP452, the description of the man who'd actually been driving, the location of the clearing with the shed, as best as I could describe it based on the roads we'd taken. They found the car at the scene about 40 minutes later, abandoned. The real license plate was underneath the fake one. The car had been stolen from a mall parking lot 3 days earlier. The interior had been wiped completely clean of fingerprints, but they found the syringe I'd made him drop, and the ketamine inside tested positive. The shed was worse. I didn't see it myself. The detectives wouldn't let me near it, but I heard about it later during the investigation. There were restraints bolted to the walls, chemical stains on the concrete floor, and evidence that it had been used before. Hair samples, trace DNA, scratches on the floor that suggested someone had tried desperately to escape. Those samples eventually matched 3 missing women from the past 14 months. All had disappeared after ordering late-night ride shares. All had seemingly vanished without a trace, their drivers showing normal GPS routes to their destinations. But they never found him. The man who'd called himself Marcus Webb, who'd used a cloned profile, who'd stolen a car and modified it with child locks and window controls. He'd vanished into the night. The real Marcus Webb, when police contacted him, was horrified. He'd reported suspicious activity on his account 3 weeks earlier, rides he hadn't completed showing up in his history, money being withdrawn from earnings that weren't his. But the rideshare company's support system was notoriously slow. They'd opened a ticket, but hadn't acted on it. In the months after, there was a lawsuit. New safety protocols were implemented. Facial recognition verification before each ride. Mandatory dash cams. Emergency buttons that work on satellite signal. Real-time monitoring of route deviations. The rideshare company settled with the families of the 3 victims for an undisclosed amount. But none of that brings them back. I still use rideshare sometimes, though not often. I check the license plate 3 times against the app. I verify the driver's face matches their photo, looking closely at the ears, the shape of the face, any distinguishing features. I share my trip with 4 different people. I sit in the back seat behind the driver so I can watch their hands. I keep my finger hovering over the emergency button. And I never, ever take a late-night ride alone anymore. But here's what really haunts me. Somewhere out there, he's still out there. Maybe he's using a different cloned profile now. Maybe he's moved to a different city, a different region. Maybe he's found a new abandoned building, a new stretch of road with no cell signal, a new hunting ground. And there's someone else out there right now, standing on a street corner at midnight, watching a silver car pull up, checking the license plate against their phone, thinking, "It matches, it's safe, the app verified it." But they don't know what I know. They don't know how easy it is to fake, how perfectly the system is designed to be exploited by someone who's careful, someone who's patient, someone who understands that the technology people trust to keep them safe can become the very thing that delivers them into danger. I tried to get the police to release a sketch of the man, but without a name or fingerprints or any identifying information, there wasn't much they could do. He was just a ghost, a very dangerous ghost who knew exactly how to stay invisible. So I'm telling you this story now, sharing every detail I can remember, because you need to understand something. That little notification chime, that smiling profile picture, that 5-star rating, none of it guarantees you're safe. None of it means the person behind the wheel is who they claim to be. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If the driver takes an unexpected turn, speak up immediately. If they won't pull over when you ask, call 911 even if you think you don't have signal. Emergency calls can sometimes connect on different frequencies. And if the doors won't open, break a window if you have to. Better to pay for damages than to end up in a shed in the woods. Because I got lucky. I fought back at exactly the right moment. I found that creek. I stumbled onto that highway. The 3 women whose DNA they found in that shed weren't so lucky. And whoever gets into his car next might not be either. My name is Jessica Martinez. I'm 28 years old. I'm an ICU nurse at Mercy General Hospital. And I'm one of the lucky ones.